What's up, everybody? Good late evening. We are here after day 3 of NFL free agency. Officially the first day of free agency, but also the least wild of the 3 days so far of the week. And, today feels a little bit different. As a Seahawks fan, we actually did significantly more today than we did over the first 2 days in terms of quantity. Not necessarily in terms of quality, but in terms of quantity, the Seahawks were actually quite active today. They did quite a bit. They were very clearly alive, very clearly participating in the events of the day. And I don't think today's video is going to have to be as much an explanation of what the plan probably is, because you actually saw it today, right? The Seahawks did several things. They signed several players, like I suspected they probably would, but the types of players that they're looking to sign, it's pretty clear. They're trying to sign low cost, low risk, low reward players that are going to provide quality depth or pretty decent play, but they're not breaking the bank. They're not overextending themselves. They're getting enough to have a quality 2024 season without committing themselves to something crazy expensive for the next several years. And that's kind of what I talked about over the first 2 days. And those first 2 days, the fans were panicking because the team wasn't doing anything. And I was trying to explain, look, this is not the time for us to be super active on the first couple days of free agency. And some people got it, some people didn't get it. But today we actually saw the team get active. Now that a lot of the top guys are gone and you're much more likely going to be able to find good deals, the team springs into action and does a few things that do not compromise the team long term, but give them enough to get the job done in 2024, which has been the way I suspected things were going to go. And I know some people don't like that. I know to some people that doesn't make sense, but a roster, not a roster, a team does not go from terrible to elite instantly. There is a process of learning to walk before you run, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So what happened today, we obviously went over all of it in stream, but you can see the stuff on screen. We did a lot. We brought in 3 players from the outside. We re-signed one of our own. We tendered a couple of free agents. We extended one of our own, and we lost one of our legends. So if you were to kind of apply the actual moves in terms of their weight here, you improve depth on the offensive line, depth in the secondary, and a little bit at linebacker. Now, I don't like everything that we did, of course. Now, some of these moves, I don't really think there's much to say. It's just a move that you do because it makes sense, but it's not anything you get excited about. It's just a move that gets done so you can have the move done, right? Like Nick Harris. Am I going to say that I like the Nick Harris signing? That's not really the right word for it, right? Because Nick Harris is a backup. He is signed to be a backup. He is signed to be depth. So you hope he never has to play because your starter is healthy all season, right? And you sign him for a very cheap deal, and he's there if you need him, and you know that he's capable of playing pretty well because he has in the past. But it's not really something that you're like, oh yeah, we got Nick Harris, we're Super Bowl bound, or anything like that, right? Now, I really like the Fant signing. I really like the Rayshawn Jenkins signing, although I wish it was a little bit cheaper. I don't think it's a big enough deal to worry about. Artie Burns, we need to see the money on that one. It's okay, though. Nothing wrong with it. It's kind of like the Nick Harris signing, right? You kind of hope he doesn't have to play, but you know he's there if he does need to play, and he's better than a guy off the street for sure. Radigan still doesn't really make sense to me, admittedly. That's the thing that I'm still scratching my head about, but it's a free agent tender. We can withdraw it at any time. Mike Jackson Sr. makes all the sense in the world. He's totally worth the tender of $3.1 million and will probably play a non-trivial role at some point this season, and I think he'll be pretty good at it. Darrell Taylor, that one we need to see the money on. I'm a little bit, I don't know. I'm not crazy about that one, but I understand the strategy of trying to protect your compensatory picks next year. So you keep somebody who you already have. And of course, Wagner, I knew he was going to go. I knew Wagner was going to go pretty much. I believed the team when they announced a few days ago that they were unlikely to bring him back, or the reports were that we were unlikely to bring him back, and I'm cool with it. So, pretty active day. Not any big splashes, but if you were expecting this team to make a big splash at this point, I think you were kind of fooling yourself. So instead of trying to explain all of this, because again, I feel like it's all pretty clear, I want to go over a few things that have been affected by these decisions. First being compensatory picks, because again, I think this is clearly a very big priority for this team. So as of right now, you can see that the Drew Lock compensatory pick was canceled out by the Pharaoh Brown signing. So we did lose that pick. However, today we got it back because of the Bobby Wagner signing. We got a 6th round pick back, which was what we lost from the Drew Lock thing. So we already regained that compensatory pick back. And also, remember, this is just a projection. This is an assumption. This is not exactly how this is going to go. And if you're wondering what I mean, let me explain. So, as you can see here, above my head, Bobby Wagner, 6th round compensatory pick, 6 million APY on his contract. So right now it is assumed that Bobby Wagner is going to net a 6th round compensatory pick. However, we know that Wagner's contract has incentives that can go up to 8.5. So if he meets those incentives, which is kind of likely if he plays, because one thing about Bobby Wagner is he puts up those stats, he gets a lot of tackles, he will probably meet most, if not all, of his incentives, then that goes up to 8.5, which could increase the value of this pick by 1 round. Because if you scroll up here to the Cardinals and look at their compensatory pick situation, you can see that their signing of Sean Murphy-Bunting is worth a 5th round compensatory pick because his APY is 8.5. So it is entirely possible that because Wagner's deal has a chance to expand up to 8.5, this 6th round pick in 2025 becomes a 5th round pick, which would be an improvement over where we stood yesterday. So right now we are sitting on a 4th, a 5th, and 2 6th round picks. And that Wagner deal, if it goes all the way up to 8.5, has a good chance of becoming the 5th. So then it would be 4th, 5th, 5th, and 6th. Remember, you can only have 4, by the way. No matter what happens, you can only have 4 at most. So if somebody like an Evan Brown were to get signed to a non-trivial deal like $5 million a year, we wouldn't get an extra pick. So if something like that were to happen, like Evan Brown gets picked up for a decent amount of money, then we could feel free to cancel it out with a signing of our own and not lose the compensatory pick. Now, if George Fant is making more than, I want to say, $3.2 million a year on his deal, which we still don't know about yet, we could lose one of the 6th round picks. That's possible. Sorry, my mouth is moving a little bit slowly right now because of all the talking I've done the last couple of days. Kind of feels like all the talking I've done on stream the last couple of days is catching up to me. But yeah, if the Fant deal is more than $3 million, it could cost us one of the 6th round picks, but we'll get to that when that actually happens. All right, so that's the compensatory situation. It's pretty good. Like, Miami has the best compensatory situation because they lost Wilkins and Hunt. Seattle's up there, though. 4 compensatory picks as of right now is a pretty nice place to be. So let's monitor this going forward and see if we can preserve this. Second thing I want to do is take a look at the hierarchy of needs sheet that I have. So looking at the chart right now, left guard, I think, maintains its position as a high need. We don't have one. Center and right guard, however, are a little more interesting now because now we have Oluwatimi and Nick Harris at center, right? And you're only going to carry 2 centers in all likelihood. So I don't think center can be considered high need anymore. But where do you put it? Because Oluwatimi is a former 5th round pick entering his 2nd year. We have no idea if he's good, and he could just be a very low-level starter in this league. And we already know that Nick Harris is just kind of a whatever piece in all likelihood. So I don't know if we can feel super confident about that. And there's a scenario where we end up getting a much better center at some point in this offseason, and it's not that big of a deal to just get rid of one of those guys, Nick Harris or Oluwatimi. The money is not going to be that big of a deal. If you have a chance to significantly upgrade at the position, you can. I don't know if it's likely, but I don't want to rule it out. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put center in low need for the time being. And I'm going to keep right guard where it is because I'm going to move forward looking at Nick Harris as a center, even though technically he is a right guard. It could also serve as Bradford's backup. So I'm going to leave that there for now. Linebacker stays. Free safety, however, I think needs to get bumped down to medium need. And I'm going to leave it at medium because we still don't really have a backup. As far as I'm concerned, our safeties right now are Rayshawn Jenkins and Julian Love, and we don't have backups for either guy. So I'm going to leave both those guys in medium for now because we need depth, and neither starter is anything stellar, right? Okay, so going over to medium need, quarterback stays where it is because we literally only have one. Right tackle, however, I think needs to be bumped over to no need because you're only going to carry two. By the way, you still have Stone Forsythe, who played okay at right tackle last year. So I think now we have to assume that right tackle is not going to be a position we address unless Fan Steel is so cheap that it's trivial to cut out of it. Because unless we get negative feedback about where Lucas is, we just can't afford to make a further investment in it. Nose tackle stays the same. Like I said, I'm going to leave safety here. But when we get to low need, I think I am going to bump, actually, not that it was affected today, wide receiver down to no need. Because the Eskridge and Lockett restructure have made it pretty clear we're committed to those two guys, and there's no room for another center if those guys remain on the team. So I think wide receiver is now no need. DK, Lockett, JSN, Eskridge, Derek Young, and Bobo in some order. Like, there isn't room for another one. We arguably don't have room for those six. One of those guys might go just because we don't have room for him. So, no need. And with Taylor coming back, I'm thinking edge rusher should also be no need because, again, we don't really have room for another edge rusher. You've got your four guys that you're relatively committed to. All four guys are either on big contracts or are a fairly recent second-round pick. So I don't think you're going to be able to justify a fifth edge. If you do, it's going to be somebody like a Levi Bell, somebody who's really easy and cheap to get. So I'm going to bump this stuff down a notch, and then I'm going to take edge rusher, put it here, and then I'm going to remove that from low need. So you can see things starting to get cleaned up. The issue is they're getting cleaned up with a lot of not super exciting players. We're not excited about Darrell Taylor. We're not excited about George Fant. We're not necessarily excited about Pharaoh Brown, although he is a backup, so that's kind of whatever. But these positional needs are getting filled up. So if you take a look at where the Seahawks sit right now, with still a month and a half between now and the draft, we have a very desperate need at left guard. As far as I'm concerned, we don't have a single one on the roster. We have one right guard, and who knows if he's going to be any good or not. We have basically no linebackers except for Radigan and maybe Patrick O'Connell, I guess. We need a backup quarterback. We might be okay at nose tackle. This is something that I'm not so sure about. Reed's in the last year of his deal, but it doesn't look like we're letting him go. And Cameron Young, I don't know how much excitement there is around him, but that is two guys, right? Like, you're probably not going to have three nose tackles. Safety, I think we need depth at minimum, and we might need actually another starting caliber player at one of the two spots. And center, I'm not completely committed to, but I do think it's a low need. So when you look at it through this lens, I don't think this is too bad at all. You're going to go into the draft with some pretty dire needs. Hopefully we can make them less dire over the next couple of weeks. But this is where we sit, as near as I can tell. And I'm not terribly angry about that. The goal, like I said, is to get to a point where you don't have a burning, desperate need at these positions by the time the draft comes around. Even if that means something as insignificant as signing Phil Haynes. Even something like that would at least buy you a little bit of breathing room. All right, I'll see you guys later. Go Hawks. Let me know what you think. Stream starts tomorrow at 9. I will be turning the stream off for about an hour in the middle of the day, but I will be coming back to finish up. See you guys then.